Welcome to Book and Lounge. I'm your host, Jacqueline. Every month we select a book, we read it, and then chew over the issues raised. This month we are talking about The Other Black Girl. Let's join the conversation. Thank you, Katrina and Taiwo, for joining me. This evening we are going to talk about the long-awaited book, the much anticipated The Other Black Girl.
The overhyped Other Black Girl.
So, what is it about? So, it's been described as The Devil Wears Prada meets Get Out, or is it Get Out meets The Devil Wears Prada? And it's supposed to be a thriller and dystopian novel at the same time. So I'm interested to hear what you all thought about it. But I think probably just need to just say a little bit about what it's about. So 26-year-old editorial assistant Nella Rogers is tired of being the only Black employee at the publishing company that she works at. She's fed up of the microaggressions, and she's thrilled when a new Black girl joins the publishing company. Only things start going wrong once the Black girl has joined, and events just turn rather bizarre. That's the only way I can describe it. And Nella is basically forced to confront her perceptions of being a Black girl in the office, and also to deal with the repercussions of the events that take place. So, first of all, what did you guys make of the book? And did it live up to the hype?
I didn't enjoy the story very much. I sort of know now it's meant to be some sort of black thriller, but it starts off to me like it's a psychological issues and dynamics of an office. And then somewhere near the end, it suddenly turns into this very weird sort of science fiction thing about the hair cream or hair gel.
Didn't like it. I'll never read her again.
Wow, it's only her debut. Come on, give her a chance.
I do like that one thing because I like the character Colin Franklin, the cash cow author for Wagner. I felt that if ever I have a daughter, her name is definitely going to be Shatrisha in honor of that useless character that he created.
Well, that's something good that's come out of the book, I guess. I can just imagine your daughter walking down the street and people calling her Shatrisha.
I actually enjoyed reading the reviews more than I enjoyed reading the book itself. And so after reading the reviews, and I started understanding the novel itself a bit better, some of them were saying, well, it's a social horror story.
A social horror story. I've never heard a book described as a social horror story before. Yeah. But anyway, so I guess I need to let you know what I thought. So first of all, I like the fact that the brains behind the creamy crack was a Black woman. See, a Black woman's been given agency. So I like that fact.
Even though she was a bad one.
Even though she was a bad one, at least, she's got some kind of agency. Because it could have been, what's his name? Richard.
Yes.
Yeah, so at least, that was a good thing about it. It did keep me wanting to read to find out what was going to happen. Despite the flaws in it, I still did want to find out what was going to happen. So I think in that respect, it kept my attention. So again, I like that about it. The idea that she was trying to explore, this idea of two Black people being in the same organization and then rising, and whether or not they pull each other back or hold each other back. I like that idea, and I really would have liked her to explore that a bit more. This idea about, you hear about crabs in a bucket. If she'd gone with that storyline and explored it a bit more, I think it would have been a much better story. I didn't like the fact that Richard was the funder. He's the one that had the money. I didn't like the ending. I thought the ending is one of the worst endings I've come across because it was just so abrupt. I mean, she spent at least 300 pages setting the scene, and then everything happened in the last 30 pages. We're like,
it was rushed.
The ending was so rushed. I'm like, I found myself asking, what? How? Where? So, I think for me, that was the worst thing about the book, the way it ended. I didn't like the fact that it kept, going back and forth between characters and then not really explaining why she's going back and forth between the characters. Didn't like that fact, but I could have lived without had the ending or had the story been balanced between setting the scene and the ending.
Going back and forth between the characters is confusing, but quite a lot of books do that sort of thing. And if it comes to, like, if I'd ever really understood what that resistance thing was doing and the part they played, because I was, like you said, I was drawn in enough I wanted to know what these people were who kept coming on the fringe of it, and should we tell her, shouldn't we tell her, and all this going on. But I still didn't really understand them when the story finished.
I agree. I found the flashbacks confusing. That really detracted a lot for me from the novel.
And I mean, I didn't see. I mean, I can understand why she put Kendra's story. I didn't really see
What about Diana?
Diana. Yes, because then she introduces the villain. So yeah, I can see that. But Shani, I didn't understand Shani very much. And also, I mean, why was she there? And then Lynn and the Resistance. What was their purpose? And why did she need to tell? Why did she need all of those three characters to tell the story of the Resistance? She could have just chosen one of them.
I got very confused in the end as to who were the Resistance, who were part of Richard and Diana's hair cream thing. I couldn't work out who was doing what. I thought if it was going to be a story about the dynamics of an office and people's sort of subtle psychological undermining of people, because the other black girl, she comes across like she's friendly, and Nella was hoping she was going to be this colleague of her same racial background. If it had just stuck to that, like you were saying, and the sort of ambitions of the office, because I was sort of like to think in an ideal world, it shouldn't really matter what colour your colleagues are. But as we don't live in that ideal world, the book is good in the sense it raises all these issues, I think, that you can discuss, but unfortunately without a good story.
So the whole idea, the premise was really good, but it wasn't executed in a way that was satisfactory.
I agree with that summary.
I'm just paraphrasing Katrina. I wasn't trying to summarize it. But the whole thing about black hair, though.
It took too long to make a point.
But didn't you think that was quite appropriate in, like in the real world, the whole issue of black hair? Because, black hair is so political, isn't it? Even now, it's political.
Mm-hmm. So you think it was appropriate that she chose black hair as the
vehicle for this whole brainwashing?
Yeah.
Because the main protagonist was a woman, a black woman. I felt that she really could have explored the issue of Nella being anxious about her blackness and whether she was black enough for black folk or too black for white folk. I felt that she really could have gone into that. In the same way that when we considered the protagonist in The Fortune Men, Matan, and all his interior life and his flaws and otherwise, I feel that if such treatment had been applied to Nella, then I actually would have or may have liked the character. But the way she came across, for me, she just came across as weak and as quite needy, and someone needing either a slap or a good shake.
But it was also her age, though, isn't it? Because she's in her 20s, right?
Yeah, she's not.
And in your 20s, you are like that, aren't you?
Yeah, you're still malleable, but at the same time, I mean, surely you have. I mean, she's been through uni, so it's not that she doesn't know anything about herself or the world.
But also, she's grown up in a predominantly white.
Hence her anxiety about being a black woman and what does it mean to be a black woman. Okay, I accept, I agree. If she were an older person, she may well have been more comfortable in her skin and come to a conclusion, maybe, that she can be any type of black woman she wants to be. She doesn't have to be a black woman the way that society says this is how a black woman has to be.
And what do you make of her relationship with Malika then? Because Malika is very different.
She needs Malika.
How old is Malika, do you think? Is she older? Has she come to terms? Or she's just a character who's confident in herself?
I took it that they're just contemporaries, but she's just a totally different personality.
Because of their backgrounds and how they've grown up.
Yeah, and she doesn't work in publishing.
Exactly.
What I'm getting, basically, is that the plot did not work for you and that you did not like Nella very much. So my question then is, who, if any, of the characters did you like and why?
I didn't dislike Nella. I quite liked her. It's just you just wanted her to have the courage to sort of, like in her work. Okay, if she feels that as a black person she's not really, she's at a disadvantage. If that's the situation, I don't think she was losing anything much by just speaking her mind. Because if she believed she was already at a disadvantage, I don't think she was putting herself more at a disadvantage. And actually, I think I was frustrated with her reticence. So I would have expected her boss, Vera, to have been equally, for goodness sake, tell me what you're trying to say, I felt with her.
But do you find that if the boss had said that and then Nella had said something that the boss didn't particularly like or didn't want to hear, but the boss had still nurtured Nella, that would have given her the encouragement to actually be true to herself and come out of her shell? She knew that the boss, if she said something that the boss didn't want to hear, it could have, just gone very badly for her.
It said that, but it also in other parts of the story said how the two of them seemed to work well together, that they were a good partnership, that it was better than somebody else and their assistant sub-editor. So I don't know. I did wonder myself how much Nella was overthinking everything. But the guys who we spoke to, who seemed to know more about publishing and all that, evidently disagreed. So
I felt that maybe that was a poor comparison. So if she was comparing herself as an assistant and her relationship with her boss lady to the other assistants and their relationships, maybe the comparisons were poor all along. It's like lowest common denominator. And in terms of the whole idea of we get along so well, who's saying that we get along so well? From whose perspective? From Nella's perspective. But then again, what does Nella know? I felt that
she's only an assistant editor.
Yeah, I felt that Nella was just too passive. I liked Hazel May McCall. I like the fact that, even though she was a bad one, I still liked her. I mean, she's able to commit to being a bad one. She's able to be...
No, but was she though?
Yeah, because she's been brainwashed.
What? I don't know. You see, this is it. So Hazel comes across as very this girl that you all want to be. Like when you watch all those teenage romantic comedies with the really popular protagonist.
Yes.
Who everybody fancies. That's how Nella comes across.
Like in Mean Girls or something.
Exactly. She's one of the mean girls, right? So that's how she comes across. But Hazel doesn't like that.
Because she's been brainwashed. Yeah.
Because she is brainwashed. But so in an office environment then, Taiwo, are you saying that you prefer to have a colleague like Hazel rather than Nella?
They seem to be two extremes.
Yes, they are, yes. So which one would you prefer to work with?
Neither of the above.
Because I don't know, if I think about it, I'd rather work with a Nella than a Hazel, because Hazel, you just don't know what you're going to get with her. 1 minute she's your friend, the next minute she's, doing things to undermine you. She's telling you one thing and then going to your boss and telling your boss something completely different.
But at the same time, I guess, because Nella is young and it's her first proper job and she relies on the income, she needs the income. I think she's invested in it for very good reasons. She's invested in the job. It's a big part of her identity. And so she cares. But if you don't really care too much, if you're not really that invested in this job, it's just like you can work with a Hazel May. As long as you've understood this is who she is. A lion will always bite you. Yeah, even if you're stroking the lion, you feed it steak every day. One day it's going to bite you because it's a lion. So you know what she is.
She's also not a very good judge of character, is she, Nella? Because she did not read Hazel.
Yes.
But you see, that's back to the hair oil, you see. It's got this charm about it. It gives everyone this aura, you've got to like them. But going back to who you'd rather work with, I mean, Nella holds back so much that we never know what she was really thinking. And so you wouldn't be able to trust her to give, there was that book cover that was awful.
Yes.
Because she isn't confident enough to speak out, you don't really know whether you can trust the opinion that she does give you. And I mean, it seemed to me bizarre, but maybe it's accurate in life. They weren't asking her more for her opinion about black issues. The person in the office they had to ask. But maybe if she's someone who isn't going to tell you what she really thinks anyway, what's the point of asking her?
But because of her passivity, I think in some ways, Nella felt that she wasn't being asked because they never really saw her as being black.
Yeah, she does. In fact, she actually does say that. Her colleagues did not see her as a black woman, but rather as a young woman who happens to be black. Does that then mean that because that's how they saw her, they didn't really value her views? Especially when she tried to set up diversity organization within the company, the diversity committee, I think. to discuss racial issues. They don't really take us seriously. They show up initially when, I think it was George Floyd, right?
Yeah, because it withered and died over time, didn't it? Initially,
Yeah.
I think they were all compelled to attend the town hall, the diversity
Yes.
town hall. But over time, less and less of them were keeping the appointment until there was only Nella, I believe, or something like that.
Despite her efforts to try and actually get it running.
But at the same time, I mean, there's the whole issue of power dynamics. She was a very junior member or staff. And as you yourself, as you said, she's pretty young. But if she was someone like, for example, Hazel May.
Through all those barriers. I imagine her to be pretty young as well. And yet she just sachets in and,
It's the locks. She's got those locks.
They're not real, Taiwo. They're not real.
Are they not real?
No!
Oh, man. I'm out.
Don't tell me you didn't get that.
I thought they were real.
No! Remember when Shani is in the restaurant, she's sweeping the restaurant, and she clocks Hazel and says, because she had worked with Hazel, Hazel's the reason why she left where she was working in the first place, right? And then she clocks her and then describes what her hair looked like when she worked with her.
Oh, yes, that's true.
She does actually say that the locks are a new thing. The locks are not real.
Wow, okay. Passive nature and all, I'd rather work with her.
Oh, so you're only going to work with Hazel because of the locks?
No, it's just that she's got so much going for her, hasn't she? I mean, she mentors younger women. She comes from a long line of civil rights activists. She lives in Harlem. She has white people that work enthralled to her blackness. So, yeah, she's got so much more going.
But all those things were lies, though. Her family.
I mean, okay, Nella's young and maybe she's not met enough people like Hazel before. But if you get a colleague who starts, they've been there, done everything, their grandfather was this, etc., you pretty soon start to take it with a pinch of salt, don't you?
You would, yes.
And of course, So, okay, Nella was young. We'll forgive her on that basis, shall we, for not starting to suspect it was all a load of rubbish.
And especially when the dates were inconsistent. Because my grandfather and grandmother did this, and in 1961, and then something else happened in 1961 that actually the dates don't add up, and Nella does not question any of it.
We've met people like that. They might not have been black, but I've met them.
But also the fact that the work that she did as an editorial assistant, surely she would have been used to doing research in certain things, research for books and all the rest of it, to round out her opinions on books that she's reading or the books that are being passed to her. So why wouldn't she have done due diligence on Hazel May?
She does in the end when she goes to her Facebook account and starts researching her. But initially, I guess she's just so excited to have another black girl in the office. It kind of completely colors her views on everything.
Yeah, but Malika would have done due diligence immediately.
Oh, Malika comes from a different background, I guess.
Yes.
Right, so the book is kind of overloaded with a lot of black Twitter comments and statements. And sometimes I just found it a bit too much. So, I mean, the author throws in every civil rights activist. She throws in every famous black person that could have walked the face of the earth. And at some point, I just got fed up reading about all these people. I just thought, now you're just showing off that you know these people.
But you find that a lot of them were just very contemporary, as in American. It's all
true.
American.
There's that as well.
That's what as I said before, this is what I got. That I looked at it, I thought, okay, I don't know this, whatever it is, phrase or individual or something. Is that because it's very American, or is it because I'm too old, or is it because of black culture that I'm not familiar with? So I actually looked up a lot more stuff, whereas if it had been like the Portuguese or something, I'd have probably just thought, okay, well, it's, you get the gist. You kind of know what the author wants. But and black Twitter, well, I'm not on any sort of Twitter, so,
But I felt as well that there was an element of overkill in terms of the contemporary references to, pop culture and things that are going on now. I didn't know a lot of these things, but I had to Google them to try and work out what is this thing that is being talked about, or this particular person. And is this to say the author felt as if only Americans and only a certain type of American is going to read this book, not the whole world is going to read this book?
That does bring me to my next question, actually. Who do you think is the target audience for this book?
Well, black women.
Black women. You think, or maybe black women of a certain age? Because I didn't think I was a target for this book at all as I was reading it. I just read it like, maybe I'm too old for this book.
I think it's definitely for a much younger audience.
What, millennials?
Or even generation. What's a new generation?
Generation Z.
Z. Yeah. I'm wondering whether or not we're just wrong, and that's probably why we struggled with it.
But it wasn't a YA novel, though, was it?
Well, no, it's not marketed as a YA novel. It's not. So coming back to the creamy crack and the plot, creamy crack is a relaxer.
Does it burn the scalp?
No, not even that, because once you start relaxing your hair, you have to continue relaxing your hair. So it's crack. That's why it's called crack.
Unless you cut it all off and let the natural hair grow out.
Yeah, as soon as the natural hair grows out, you have to keep relaxing it. So that's why it's called crack. But the creamy bit, obviously, because it's creamy. So yeah, coming back to that, and this idea that some people chose to undergo the treatment voluntarily, I was just wondering, can you understand why someone would choose to have their personality completely changed?
Well, yes.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if it was completely changed, but some people would do anything to get ahead. So I'm sure some people would. They'd see it just the same as some people will, get change the shape of their nose and stuff like that, which to me is extraordinary. But if they think it's going to enhance their path through life.
I agree, because I felt I kind of related it to the Matrix. Will you take the blue pill or will you take the red pill? Do you want to become aware of what the situation really is in the real material world, or would you rather continue to live in this fantasy that isn't real? And I feel that for some people, they would prefer to live in the fantasy that isn't real, as in one of the characters in the Matrix saying, I know that this isn't a real sirloin steak, but it tastes damn good, even though I know that it isn't a real steak, because it's too painful to live in the real world. If you're thinking in terms of maybe, in the other book we mentioned something about predestination, or is your whole life written? So if you're looking at your life and you're saying, I'm of a certain socioeconomic background, I'm of a certain ethnicity or race, I'm of a certain age, and maybe ability or disability, I can only get so far. Therefore, in some ways, you might decide, what is the point in struggling to get further ahead when I'm never going to get there, because society or structures around me always seem to militate against me getting ahead.
But there's also the pain element, because as we said, the author does talk a lot about what's happening and Black Lives Matter and how Black people are constantly being killed and the trauma that Black people experience. There's also that element that part of the reason as to why they take it is because they don't want to live with that trauma. They want to forget it, and that's happening. I mean, I can understand why you'd want to block it out, because if you're constantly suffering, you're constantly seeing people being killed, and then you're constantly traumatized, you get to a stage where you just get fed up. That's like me. I'm just done with reading books about slavery. I don't think I can read it anymore. So that makes me understand and empathize with someone who can actually choose to take the treatment voluntarily.
Yes, I agree.
Coming to how the treatment itself was and how it works, what did you think? It was credible?
Why the story gets so irritating, because if it was going to be credible, it needed, well, for me, I wanted to know more about it, how it worked, all the surroundings of it, whereas it was very peripheral to the actual mechanics of it was very peripheral to the story. And yet, like, how much of a personality change did it give you? We don't know. What happened if you stopped using it and started it again? We don't know. If you ran out and you couldn't get it.
Oh, too many questions.
Isn't that the problem? The fact that, in a good science fiction movie or novel, you may not find that it's credible, that the story that's being spun, but to an extent it might be believable. The science may not support it, but the story is being told so well, you can still go with it. The whole idea, you're thinking of maybe Back to the Future, and you're thinking, can you meet your future self? And if you meet your future self, does that kind of cancel out who you become and all that kind of, you go down this wormhole. So the problem there, I felt, fatal flaw with the book is that it just is so unbelievable. I mean, if it's half believable, I think you can get away with it. It doesn't have to be based on real science. It just has to be half believable for the story to flow and for you to enjoy the good yarn that is being told. But when it's totally unbelievable and it raises too many questions, that's when the problem comes in.
And the resistance as well, because the resistance wasn't really properly explained or allowed to be developed in the story. It's just annoying. I felt the part of the story that was being the best developed was in the first half. You said they're setting the scene, but you're getting all these all her insecurities and the dynamics that are going on in the office. That's all very believable. Because
and the microaggressions, how she describes them, the kind of things that as a Black person or even as a woman you put up with in the office, I think that's done very well as well.
Yes, because a lot of the problem with microaggressions is you're never really sure if you're imagining them or not. And I felt that a lot with her, that how much of it's going on in her head and she's undermining herself, and how much of these people really, belittling her in one way or another because of race issues. So all that it worked, and I was just beginning to get interested in it and find out where the anonymous notes were coming from. It didn't follow that path, but I was disappointed.
Gaslighting as well, it was useful in that she had the whole device of Malaika, because Malaika is a good foil for her to be able to offload, this is what's happening to me. What do you think? And then Malaika can kind of say, okay, I think this is what's going on. I think that's what's going on. Her going out with the white boyfriend, she can't do that because he probably wouldn't understand the ins and outs of what she's trying to, or either that, or she'd have to break it down. And in breaking it down, a lot of it gets lost in translation.
What did you think was the point of Owen?
Just there for sex.
There wasn't any sex, though. Maybe that would have made the book a bit more interesting.
Only if it was well written. But I feel that rather than the whole issue of science fiction, they should have gone down the horror more emphasis on the horror, because horror would give them the idea of, it would give them the latitude to kind of bring in all the maybe supernatural, the occult, if you want. The fantastical it can easily play into horror rather than the science fiction that has to have an element of science, even if it's not entirely plausible science. But it was kind of like a mishmash of, which is why they kept talking about The Devil Wears Prada versus Get Out. It's kind of like a mishmash, but it doesn't really, they don't seem to work together. It's neither one, it's neither fully science fiction nor fully horror.
No, fully Devil Wears Prada. Yeah. I think, but I do think she does Devil Wears Prada better than she does Get Out part of it.
Yes, I agree with that.
And coming back to the Resistance,
I don't know the other films or the other.
I haven't seen Devil Wears Prada.
The Get Out one, I don't know.
Good film, watch it.
No, I don't watch many films.
Yeah, but you should watch Get Out anyway.
Yeah, it's worth a watch.
Okay. Yeah. Resistance. Katrina, you mentioned the resistance. That's one of the other things I found really frustrating about the book, because this resistance is supposed to have been going for 5 years. Now, if they'd known that this woman is out there, or this movement, well, not even just Hazel May, that there's this group of people out there who are recruiting Black women. And that's just the other thing. Was it just Black women that they were recruiting and trying to change how they thought? Or was it just Black society? Because when she picks up that list from the printer, it is just women. So then that brings me to the question, why just women?
The bloke who, the YouTuber or whatever he was.
Oh, Jesse. They did get him, didn't they?
He's the only man who's mentioned who's had the hair treatment.
But you can understand Jesse, though, in that he was quite an influential person. You can understand that. But the list of these women, why? They're not kind of like they're not top women that you need to kind of knock off the top of the food chain, are they? They're just, I didn't know them as being anyone in particular.
They're just college graduates, women who've gone to university and have just come out of university into the work field. So I didn't understand why the focus was mainly on women. Why were they just changing women? Because men do have ambitions and men do suffer trauma. So you think
put things in their hair.
Oh, they do, and their beards as well.
Only our Shapton.
So yes, I didn't understand why the focus was on women. But anyway, it's coming back to the resistance. The resistance has been there for 5 years. they've known since the time of Kendra Ray, that this is happening. So 5 whole years they haven't made any progress. I found that hard to believe.
They didn't seem very organized, did they? In terms
well,
of being
they're organized enough to kidnap people.
Or as a one-off.
I don't think that was the one, or to fly people from one state to the other, to kidnap people, to give people completely new identity.
It doesn't work.
So anyway, so then that brings me to a question. If you were an editor at Wagner, how would you change the book?
Well, I go back to what I said at the beginning. It doesn't know what it's trying to be. It needs to decide what genre it's taking. I know you can mix genres, but if you're going to do it, you've got to do it a lot better than that. So given that it's a first book,
yeah,
I think maybe the advice from me would be to decide what you are doing and develop that properly into it. But it's been very successful, so maybe my advice would be very wrong. It seems to be successful if everybody's talking about it.
Has it been successful, or has the marketing been successful?
Well, is it making money for somebody?
But just, I guess I can see where Ty was coming from. Just because it's making money doesn't necessarily mean that it's a successful book.
No, from a point of view of literature, but from a point of view of
money, financials.
After all, 50 Shades of Grey, a lot of people said in terms of content, in terms of merit, it didn't have a great deal of merit, but it was commercially a great success.
There's been 2 films, right? Made about it. I was just going to say, I guess then that's the conclusion we can draw from that, is that if you're a writer and you have a really good publicist and you have a really good marketing team, it doesn't matter what you write.
It just means that it probably won't last. It's not a book that's going to be on everyone's list for, a must read into the future.
So you're saying it won't stand the test of time?
No, I don't think so. But the film, you say it's going to be made into a film. The film might be more fun.
A series on Hulu.
But with the way that it ended, I could see a sequel. And I'm just wondering whether or not when she was writing it, she did have in mind that it might be turned into a film. So, I mean, the author has worked in a publishing company. So I guess she knows the mechanics of how to work a publishing company and how to actually get your book published and actually how to get people to buy it. So credit to her. She's done very good marketing for it.
Which I find nothing wrong with, because, I mean, it's possible for a book to be a great commercial success and yet not be
literally acclaimed.
Yeah, not to have the kudos. And then you find that eventually the author really wants to have the admiration of her peers, even though she's got all this money, but she's still not satisfied because they don't really consider her to be a great author. This is not a classic work.
Mm.
So, but then again...
Is it better then to write a classic work and not make any money, or to write a mediocre book and actually make a lot of money?
Well, when it comes to paying the bills...
I'm just sitting here wondering, if I was a writer, which one would I prefer? Would I prefer to write a really good book and be poor, or write an okay book and have a lot of money?
Well,
I don't know.
You hope if you write a really good book that you might be poor, but gradually as the world notices, you'll be less poor.
True.
But they may not notice in your lifetime, though.
Well, that's the gamble.
Sometimes I think that if you're an author, would you prefer to be maybe like Harper Lee? You have one novel that is, a great commercial and also literary success, and that's it. Although when you then bring out another novel, many people say, why did you write another novel? You should have just...
stuck to the one. Yeah.
Why you were ahead.
Yeah, but then, when I guess when you're writing, you don't think that your second novel is not going to be as great as your first one, do you? And then also there's that lure of the advance where the publisher gives you a whole load of money expecting the same thing.
But there may not necessarily be another novel. You may just do the one novel and then just become a recluse.
Like some writers do, yeah. But anyway, I think we've exhausted the other black girl. So my final question is that, would you recommend it? And who would you recommend it to if you would?
I'd recommend it to a young person that they may like it, because I think maybe it should have been marketed as a YA novel.
Yeah, I agree with what Taiwo is saying, and I think I couldn't recommend it unreservedly. I'd have to tell them that it's got some interesting issues to think through, but you might not like all of it. You might not, because to me it doesn't really hold up, but it provides a lot of discussion.
Okay. And how would you score it out of 5?
Give it a 2.
Okay.
2 is as much as I can manage.
I was really, really looking forward to this, because this was like when I sent out the list of books for us to read, this came top. Lots of people voted for this. So I was really looking forward to it, especially given the the marketing. It's everywhere. So I thought it was, going to be a really good read, really exciting. But I was so disappointed that I don't think I can recommend it to anybody. I really don't think I can. I can't bring myself to. So, nah. And I agree with you. I'd give it a 2 out of 5.
You've been using the hair gel. That's why you don't want to recommend it to anyone.
No, if I'd been using this hair gel, surely I would be recommending it.
Yeah, but if everybody uses the hair gel, I mean, how are you going to rise to the top?
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah, because everybody's fighting for the same. So I guess you just have to keep using more and more hair gel.
I believe that when it comes out as a series, I believe that it's going to deviate away from the novel. I don't think it's strictly going to follow the novel. Because the novel's implausible, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. Yeah, it's not credible. There's so many holes in it that I would struggle to believe that they'll stick with it. So, are you actually going to watch the series?
No, I'm not, because I haven't got access to Hulu, and I'm not going to pay for it.
Okay.
If it's on Netflix, I might do.
Sorry?
If it's on Netflix, I might do.
Okay. Is that just to compare?
If it ever turns up on something that I've got, which will be something that's free, then I'll watch it.
Okay.
Yeah, just to compare.
The fact that you actually watch it means that it's not as bad.
I might still slag it off afterwards. Actually, one of the things I found irritating about it, I said before, it goes into endless detail about what people are putting on and what are they wearing and all that. Well, they can cut all that out. You can just enjoy looking at it. Because Hazel looks great, and I'm quite happy to, admire it all.
Cool.
But when people say that the genre known as chick lit, is that not part of it? Is that not one of the kind of staples where they know the whole?
I wouldn't consider this to be chick lit at all. I wouldn't.
Okay.
I think I don't know what this book actually is.
It's a social horror story.
Now, what's with Francis's books? Francis Mensah Williams?
Yeah.
She's chick lit.
Okay.
I always imagine chick lit to be a bit more romantic.
Yeah.
Okay, so about relationships.
Yeah.
So you might have a lot of the same issues, but
that's chick lit, but it's well written. Whereas this, as I said, I really don't know what this book was trying to be.
But it's well written.
Well, it is.
Do you think it's something about modern authors that they go, or American authors or something, that there's what I consider too much detail about what people are actually wearing and the micro, what they ate for breakfast, and I found that a little bit with Friday Black. I felt like there was a lot of stuff that I didn't need to know about his trainers, and
Is that literally?
It was more relevant in Friday Black, but is it all part of the retail life in America, or?
So is that the Instagram equivalent of literary description, where you have to, it's like taking a photograph of it and you're describing it in words because you can't take a photograph?
That's an interesting view. Well, I guess, I don't know, they think that they're trying to build the character. They're trying to get you to visualize what the character looks like.
I was thinking, can you imagine, Jane Eyre worrying about what to wear before Mr. Rochester walks in? It doesn't sort of...
Jane Eyre was a governess.
Any of that, do you?
Well, if Jane Eyre lived in 2021, she would be. Anyhow, thank you guys so much for your time and for the great discussion, despite the fact that the book wasn't one of the best. Really enjoyed. I actually really did enjoy talking about it.
More than reading it.
Actually, yes, that is true. But it's good to get, as always, it's good to get other people's opinions and what people thought about it. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for reading the book and for giving up your evening and for everything. And thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this or any of our other episodes, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And don't forget to share. Goodbye.